Welcome into OutKick the show. I'm your fearless leader, Clay Travis, coming to you live from Washington, D.C., where I'll be today and tomorrow. And then I'll be in L.A. on Thursday and Friday. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. We will do shows today. We're going to tape, I think we're actually going to be live with The Fade with Kelly Stewart, do a gambling special for you for both the NFL and for college football. But today is all college football reaction after week one, and there is a lot to react to. But right off the top, I want to tell you, Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. With Prize Picks, it's just you against the number, and boy, oh boy, did we come close to getting a big 10-1 payout over the weekend. I'll have a pick for you tomorrow, but you can win up to 10 times your money, up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $100, into $1,000. There's many different ways to go. All you have to do is go to prizepicks.com and use the name OutKick, and you will get hooked up in a big way. We got a Caleb Williams guarantee for you on the Thursday edition. I will give you my picks, and then by the Thursday edition, I mean the Wednesday edition, because we are right now already to Tuesday. That's still to come, but in the meantime, go get hooked up right now. Go download the Prize Picks app, use code OutKick, and you will be well on your way to getting hooked up beyond a shadow of a doubt. Code OutKick, you play $5, you get $50. That's code OutKick on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 pick. You will get hooked up. Again, prizepicks.com, code OutKick. Do it today, prizepicks.com, code OutKick. All right, a ton to discuss. Let's start with what I thought were the most significant outcomes of the week that was. As always, by the way, you can go read a bevy of words from me about college football every single Sunday, as you have been able to do for 13 years now with the Starting 11 column. It is up right now. It will be up every Sunday morning on OutKick all season long, as it has been up for over a decade now. Big wins: Georgia over Clemson, Miami over Florida, USC over LSU, and Notre Dame over Texas A&M. Those were, to me, the 4 most significant major outcomes from week one. Now, we also had FSU already dropping a second game. Vanderbilt Commodores get a big win as well. I'll give you my OutKick top 10 based on how things have gone, as well as my SEC power rankings. But let's start with what I thought, this is the order in which I would rank them, was the most impressive win of the entire weekend. And to me, it was Notre Dame on the road getting the win over Texas A&M. This was, to me, of all the games that took place, the signature win for the Fighting Irish. And what stood out to me was, first of all, A&M fans are the best fans of a major program in college sports that never gets any kind of win. I believe they are now 1-10 in their last 11 college game day visits, which is unprecedented. Maybe the best possible scenario of this was A&M wins game 1 in college baseball in the World Series over Tennessee, leads for much of game 2, loses game 2, loses a brutal close game in game 3, and then their head baseball coach leaves and goes to Texas, their most hated rival, and leaves them high and dry. Tie game, late in this one, I thought and expected that A&M would out-physical Notre Dame down the stretch in a hot, humidity-laden Texas game in late August. Instead, Notre Dame out-physicaled Texas A&M. This is a talented Texas A&M team, and Notre Dame pulled away, got the win. I think it's an incredible credit to Marcus Freeman and the Fighting Irish, breaking in a new quarterback, breaking in a lot of good young talent. For a long time, you would say Notre Dame was more finesse than physical. They now were able to match the physical. And if you look at Notre Dame's schedule going forward, I wrote down this. I want to make sure I get all these games right, because I don't want to jump too far ahead. But to me, my goodness, Notre Dame should be favored now to go out and get the college football playoff spot, because I just don't think they're going to lose multiple of these games. Now, let me hit you with what is left right now for Notre Dame on this schedule. They've got Northern Illinois, at Purdue, Miami of Ohio, Louisville, Stanford, at Georgia Tech, at Navy, Florida State. We'll talk about Florida State in a little bit. Virginia, Army, and then at USC. Now, maybe Notre Dame loses one of those games. That wouldn't be staggering. But given they don't have to play a conference championship game, an 11-1 Notre Dame team is going to make the 12-team playoff. A 10-2 Notre Dame team would have a decent chance to make the playoff, depending on who they lost to. I think Notre Dame has to be favored to be a playoff team now. I really do. I think at A&M, we'll see what happens with SC. But I think at A&M, given how tough Aggie Land is, given the home field advantage that Kyle Field creates, I got to give credit to Notre Dame. I thought it was the single best win of the entire weekend. And not only was it a win that should propel Notre Dame into solidly the top 10 for weeks to come, I think it also has a very good chance to put them into the playoffs. So on the flip side, for Texas A&M, look, Elko is going, I think, to be a good defensive coordinator. But what stood out to me was you couldn't throw the football. There were no separation. Maybe Notre Dame just has an elite secondary, and maybe you're going to be able to make plays down the field later in the season. There were no explosive plays out there. And without explosive plays, being able to create space for your receivers, I thought that A&M, that's where they need to be on the recruiting trail, the most aggressive. They just don't have explosive offensive talent. And so that's what stood out to me about A&M. Felt like an 8-4 caliber A&M team in year one of Mike Elko. But we will see. Biggest win for Notre Dame. Second biggest win, SC over LSU. Look, this was monumental for Lincoln Riley. For essentially Lincoln Riley's entire head coaching career, the question has been, will he ever have a defense? And I know we're going to get into LSU's failures with Brian Kelly and decision-making and not putting the game away and all those things. I'll talk about it. But to me, what stood out in this game more than anything else is USC's defense performed at an elite enough level for them to be capable of winning a relatively low-scoring game. And look, in general, this has been the issue with USC. They've gone out and they've scored 40 or 50 points, but they've given up 40 or 50 points. I think you can argue this is as big of a win as Lincoln Riley has had relative to expectations in a very, very long time as a head coach. I thought it was a signature statement win, particularly because LSU had the majority of Allegiant Field out in Vegas. It's a neutral site game, and they came from behind. And to me, I go back to one particular scenario. First of all, LSU was very undisciplined in this game. I thought they gave it away. But they get the stop on fourth down. With about 8 minutes left in this game, LSU takes possession, up 17-13. And I really thought, okay, this is when they extend this into at least a touchdown lead, if not a double-digit lead. And they get a 15-yard penalty, so they go back from, I think, what would have been the 36 to take possession all the way to the 21. That's pretty significant. And then it's 3rd and 1. And they put Nussmeier in the shotgun, and they line up John Emery next to him, and they run on 3rd and 1 out of the shotgun, and USC stones them. And when that USC stop happened, I felt like at that moment the complete game flipped. If LSU gets a first down there, you saw Brian Kelly reacting and slamming his hand down and talking about how this was on him and they couldn't put away SC. To me, I don't disagree. And this has been the problem with the Brian Kelly era at LSU so far. 3rd straight year that he has lost his opening game. 5th straight year overall, which is staggering to think about, that LSU has lost their season opener. But this has been the issue with Brian Kelly. The team has not been disciplined enough, and the team has not been able to actually put away opponents when they should have. And this one, look, it's early. It's a 12-team playoff. LSU still has the opportunity to go 7-1 in the SEC and fight themselves into the playoff. The schedule is not brutal, particularly on the road for LSU. But If you are watching this team right now, and if you are a diehard LSU fan, do you feel like the Tigers have the discipline under Brian Kelly to get past Alabama, to get past Oklahoma, to get past the teams that they are going to be playing at the top of the SEC? Now, again, going into the schedule, the road schedule is not super tough. And most of the talented teams come to Baton Rouge. 3 of the 4 toughest games. I think Ole Miss comes to Baton Rouge, Alabama comes to Baton Rouge, and I think I'm correct that Oklahoma comes to Baton Rouge. Most of their toughest games are at home, and I think they have to go on the road at A&M. Adam, you can check the schedule and make sure that I'm getting all those right off the top of my head. The schedule sets up in a way where if LSU holds serve at home, and if they can get past A&M, who looked pretty wobbly, then the road schedule is not that difficult as SEC schedules go. But you probably have to go 7-1 now to be able to make the playoff going forward. That's not as easy as you would hope. So again, I find this performance ominous given the past performances of LSU. And again, I rank it as the second best win of opening weekend behind Notre Dame, but on the road, neutral site, what was effectively a road game because the vast majority of the crowd had appeared, 75% or so, were rooting for LSU, even though SC had a much closer and easier trip from LA to this game. But it feels like a signature statement win for Lincoln Riley. Okay, now, third best win. I actually think it was Miami over Florida. I know that Miami was favored, but Mario Cristobal's team had not won a road game of this magnitude, and Cam Ward played the lights out. I shared a video of a funny Florida Gator fan reacting in a Denny's parking lot to the performance. But early on, he pointed out to something that I wrote about and that I noticed as I was sitting watching the game with my sons. Cam Ward was playing at a different speed. As he scrambled early in this game, there were 2 times on the opening drive where he scrambled and basically just kind of sashayed out of bounds, just kind of strolled out of bounds. Wasn't even in any way feeling the pressure of the Florida Gator defense. And we're talking with my boys. I said he's playing at a different speed. He's very confident. They went down. They scored on the first drive, threw a touchdown pass to a guy I think who's been in the college football for 9 years now, and took the lead and never relinquished it and dominated against Florida. And so to me, this makes Miami clearly the favorite to win the ACC. I think Miami has looked head and shoulders better than Florida State or Clemson for sure, than Virginia Tech, which we'll get to in a moment. But you should make, I think, Miami a clear favorite to win the ACC. But on the flip side, my goodness, let me pause. Billy Napier's done. It's one thing to lose to a hard-fought opponent in an opening game. LSU just did that on a neutral site. Texas A&M just did that at home. You cannot get blown out in week 1 by 24 points as Florida did and have the remaining games on the schedule that they have. It's flat out unacceptable. Billy Napier, to me, is finished as the head coach of the Florida Gators. And I think most of you out there that are Florida Gator fans and are watching or listening to this are nodding along. This is year 3. You have a team in Miami that's good, but you can't lose in the manner in which the Gators did in week 1 because the remainder of their schedule is really, really brutal. And if you look at what Florida has coming up, I just want to make sure I get these 7 games right. And again, I'm reading from the starting 11, which I would encourage all of you to check out. Napier is 11-15 at Florida, 6-10 in the SEC. Back-to-back losing seasons. And I think he's headed for a 3rd straight losing season. And remember, you have to close with this. Georgia, at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, at Florida State. And you also have Kentucky and Tennessee on the front end of that. I think there's a good chance that Billy Napier gets fired at the Kentucky game. I think Tennessee is going to blow out Florida in a major way. That's still weeks down the line. but I think Kentucky may well beat Florida. And if that happens, you have a bye week, and then you close with Georgia at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss at Florida State. Interestingly, Florida State at least doesn't look as difficult as it did before. But I think the big takeaway there is Billy Napier's done. I don't see any way that he survives as head coach for another season. Final big win that stood out to me, Georgia in the second half took it to Clemson. And to me, the story here from a Clemson perspective is, and I'm going to write on this longer form, I think, Dabo Swinney has not adjusted to the NIL and transfer portal era. Now, he had back-to-back quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, two of the best quarterbacks that you could possibly want or ever hope to have in college football back-to-back. And I think those guys papered over some of the inconsistencies of Dabo. But also you had consistency at the coordinator positions by and large. You built a culture that was different. You finally got past Florida State. You made yourself the class of the ACC, and you were able to compete with the top ends of the SEC in the college football playoff. No longer. Georgia has beaten a lot of teams bad. But for week one, Clemson needed to demonstrate that they were an elite caliber program. They couldn't do it. And Georgia came back out and they said, hey, without Brock Bowers, without Ladd McConkey, our old school sort of receiving core, we're going to roll out Carson Beck, and he's still going to perform at a very high level. And we are still the Georgia Bulldogs, and we have better talent than you. We have more 4 stars. We have more 5 stars. We're going to be in the playoff every year as long as Kirby Smart is here. In fact, the argument is that Georgia is the new Alabama. Now, Ohio State hasn't had the same level of success. They haven't won the double national championships. Alabama fans can look at what they did in the first game with Kalen DeBoer and say, hey, Jalen Milroe still looks pretty good. Did you see what we did to Western Kentucky? All of those things are still very valid. But Georgia is, to me, the most talented team in college football right now with the most dominant coach in college football, and that is going to be a tough tandem to overcome, even though Georgia has to go on the road at Ole Miss, they have to go on the road at Texas, and they have to go on the road at Alabama, which are, I think, the 3 most difficult games from a road perspective of anybody in the SEC. They didn't do the Bulldogs any favors. Again, Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss. That is Georgia not living well, and they still have to play Tennessee. So those are the 4 wins. Again, in order, I would say Notre Dame had the best win. USC had the second best win, followed by Miami, followed by the Georgia Bulldogs. And so all of those things breaking down, continuing, they start in a major way. Okay, a couple of other major stories that to me stand out in the world of college football. Boston College beat Florida State. Florida State is now 0-2, losses in Ireland to Georgia Tech, and also now have lost to Boston College, physically dominated by the opposing offensive lines in both directions. That, by and large, has been a unmitigated disaster for FSU. They now get the rest of the week off and then don't come back and play again until September 14th when Mike Norvell is going to have to go head-to-head against the Memphis Tigers, his old team, coming down and playing against Florida State, with FSU trying to avoid going to 0-3. Florida State becomes the first team to eliminate themselves from college football playoff contention inside of the top 10, and they are now out of the top 25. I don't think they will be back at all this year. As we talked about last week, DJU is not a high-level quarterback. Mike Norvell swung and missed in the transfer portal with being able to turn him into one, and that is a significant defeat for them. FSU fans, just a few weeks ago from a football perspective in terms of the games they played, thought you were going to be playing for the national championship with Jordan Travis. Now you're sitting there like, man, are we going to be 4-8? Are we going to fall completely apart? This program trying to sue everybody, but unfortunately they've forgotten how to play football in the meantime. Other big stories that are out there. How about Vanderbilt beating Virginia Tech? double-digit, nearly 2-touchdown underdog. Nothing fancy about it. Miss a late field goal, Vanderbilt does, under head coach Clark Lee. Come back in overtime, win. This was a really, really nice win. Vanderbilt fans have not been able to celebrate, especially not when Texas A&M loses, not when LSU loses, not when Florida loses, and Vanderbilt's running around saying, hey, we got the dub, and you guys are a bunch of losers. I don't want to get too excited about it. But Nico is the truth. And I know it was against Chattanooga, but I think if you guys go back and watch what happened with Nico, the question is, can they keep him healthy? What I am willing to say at this point is Nico is the best freshman quarterback. Now, I know he's a redshirt freshman, but he is the best freshman quarterback Tennessee has had since Peyton Manning made his debut in 1994. That's 30 years ago. Nico looks to me like a clear first-round draft pick. I said it on the guys with the Next Round Live, my buddy Lance Taylor, Dunaway, and Brown. I said, you don't have to be an expert to know when somebody's great at playing piano. You can listen to them play the piano and say, yeah, that person's really good, even if you have no knowledge whatsoever of what it takes to play piano at a high level. I don't claim to be an incredible expert at breaking down the quarterback position. I'm just not. But I can watch Nico play quarterback and watch the ball come out on his throws and tell you that he has incredible, unnatural talent at the quarterback position. Again, if they can keep him healthy, then we have got something incredibly high when it comes to his ceiling. So I am excited. We'll see what happens. All of you can watch Tennessee play NC State on Saturday night in primetime. You can start off your day with big noon kickoff with Texas on the road against Michigan in the unquestionably best game of the week. Confirm this for me if I believe I'm correct in this, Adam. I think there's only 2 top 25 matchups. That is both teams in the top 25 in the upcoming Saturday. Clearly, Texas, Michigan, best game by far. All my gambling picks, by the way, are up on OutKick, and I'm going to be talking with Kelly Stewart about all those gambling picks here shortly. But I believe Tennessee, NC State, neutral site from Charlotte is the only other. Both teams are in the top 25 matchup, Texas, Michigan. So you can watch Nico for yourself on Saturday night. Tennessee's defensive line, I think, is much improved, the defense overall. But let me tell you, I think a lot of you are going to watch Nico, and I think there's going to be a lot of super positive things being said about him from many people who did not watch, or many people who said, oh, it's only Chattanooga. Going forward, he did an incredible job, and that is correct. There's only 2 games with double top 25 teams out there. Okay. Let me give you my top 10. Remember, I only rank the top 10 based on on-field results. Early in the season, I give incredible credence to big Power 5, now Power 4 conference wins, road neutral, major conference wins. So I've got Georgia as the best team. I thought they dominated more so than anybody else did. I've got Miami as the second best team. Notre Dame as the third best team, SC as the fourth best team. Then I'm tossing in Boston College, who, as we said, dominated Florida State. Georgia Tech in the 6th spot, followed by Penn State. Nice win over West Virginia that we didn't talk about a great deal, but it's not easy to win in Morgantown. Vanderbilt in 8, not because I think they're the 8th best team, but because I was so impressed by how well that they did. Alabama in the 9 spot, and then Texas in the 10 spot. That is my OutKick top 10 based on what I saw on the field. And then the SEC power rankings, Georgia first, Vanderbilt second, because they had the second best win, Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee, lots of big wins, 50, 60-point wins against lower conference teams. Arkansas, Missouri, Auburn, Texas A&M, LSU, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and then South Carolina and Florida to finish it off. All right, up next, we're going to do the fade with Kelly Stewart, who I believe is sitting and ready to roll. NFL returns, college football gambling picks, all that and more with Kelly Stewart. It's the fade up next from Washington, D.C. I'm Clay Travis. Thanks for hanging. Let me get out my handy notepad for all of my picks that I made this morning. That's next. This has been OutKick the Show. DBAP, unless you need to SBAP. I'll see you guys for the gambling show here shortly.